The party lights were still flickering in the distance when I stepped into the cold. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left. Nobody followed. Not even her. 15 minutes earlier, she had dragged me through those glass doors with a dazzling grin, and her hand locked around mine like it meant something. I wasn't even supposed to be there. She said it would mean a lot if I came, that we'd spend time together, that this was important. So I stood beside her as she greeted everyone. All these people with perfect teeth and loud laughter and names that sounded like brands. She introduced me once, maybe twice. "This is Otis," she'd say quickly, then shift the spotlight away from me before I could breathe. Then, like a scene written in fast forward, she drifted further and further into the crowd. A glowing silhouette disappearing into better conversations, deeper laughs, and warmer eyes that weren't mine. I stood by the champagne tower, pretending I liked the taste. I don't even drink. I watched her, Mira, as she twirled her hair and leaned in too close to a man in a navy suit. He had the kind of jawline people comment on. She touched his chest when she laughed. Not the shoulder, the chest. A woman next to me whispered, "That your girlfriend?" I said nothing. I just smiled, the kind of smile you wear to funerals. Then I walked out. No words, no drama, just air that didn't stink of expensive perfume and fake sincerity. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I passed a hot dog cart. The city had started to breathe again. I pulled it out. "Mira, come." Just that. One word. All caps. No context. Like I was a dog she'd forgotten to call sooner. I stared at the screen, standing in the middle of the sidewalk like a glitch in the system. Cars passed. A man cursed at a cab. Someone laughed loudly from across the street. But me, I just stood there, phone in hand, jaw tight, feet stuck. She wanted me to come back. But not because she missed me. No, that text didn't smell like love. It smelled like damage control. And I wasn't sure if I was the damage or the one being controlled. The sidewalk felt more real than anything that had happened in the last 2 hours. The wind was sharp, not gentle, the way Mira always pretended life was. For once, I wasn't pretending. My shoes were pinching. My collar itched. My hands were freezing. But all of it, painfully real, was still better than being wallpaper at that party. I kept staring at the text. Come. No punctuation. No apology. No explanation. Just a command. I should have ignored it. A smarter version of me would have kept walking, turned off the phone, gotten on the train, and disappeared into a night that didn't ask questions. But I've never been the version of myself I admire. So, like the weak husband I'd become, I turned back. When I re-entered the building, the doorman didn't even look at me. The elevator ride was silent, filled with my reflection staring back at me in polished chrome. I looked like someone who didn't know when to stop giving people second chances. The rooftop was louder than before. Laughter erupted from a corner as I stepped in, but it died down quickly when people noticed me. Some eyes flicked to Mira. Others lingered on me. Curious, pitiful, maybe even embarrassed for me. She didn't see me right away. She was still with him, the man in the navy suit. I noticed the detail this time. His hand rested lightly against her lower back. Not obvious, but familiar. Intimate. Possessive. She finally turned and locked eyes with me. Her smile faltered, then reappeared like nothing had happened. "There you are," she said, walking over. "You disappeared." "You were busy," I replied, keeping my tone flat. My voice felt smaller than I wanted it to. I hated that. "I just wanted you to come back. Don't be like this." "Like what?" "Dramatic." That word hit harder than it should have. Dramatic. As if quietly leaving a room where your wife forgets you exist is somehow theatrical. As if being invisible is normal. She tugged at my sleeve gently. "Please, Otis, just come say hi to Grant. He wants to meet you." Grant. Navy suit guy had a name now. "I think he already met your hand," I muttered. She glared. "Not here," she hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." That's when it happened. That phrase, embarrassing yourself, rang through my skull like a siren. Not us, not me, not what did I do wrong, but you. Always me. She led me toward him like I was some child forced to shake hands with a stranger. Grant looked amused, smug even, as he extended his hand and said, "Otis, right?" Myra's told me a few things. I shook it, firm, colder than I meant to. He smiled like someone who knew he was winning a game I didn't know we were playing. Mira stood between us, sipping her drink, her eyes darting nervously between our faces. "Great weather tonight," Grant added, like we were strangers in line at a bank. I nodded. "Fantastic weather for being humiliated." Myra's smile broke. "Can we not do this here?" I looked at her, really looked, and realized I didn't know who she was in that moment. And worse, I don't think she knew who I was either. "Sure," I said, stepping back. "Let's not do this here." I turned around. Again. And this time she didn't text. I didn't take the elevator this time. I took the stairs, all 10 floors, because I needed to feel the burning in my legs. Something that reminded me I was still real, that my emotions weren't just glitches in my head. Every step down felt like unpeeling another layer of humiliation. By the time I hit the lobby, I was sweating through my collar and gripping the stair rail like it owed me answers. I stood outside the building for maybe 10 minutes trying to decide what to do. Go home? Wander until sunrise? Text someone? But who would I even text? I'd become so wrapped around Myra's world that I had no one left of my own. I didn't even have a group chat. I had work acquaintances who forgot I existed the second I logged off. My phone buzzed again. "Mira, can we talk?" No apology, just a soft-pedaled demand, dressed as diplomacy. I didn't respond. I walked, just aimlessly, through streets that smelled like garlic knots and cigarette smoke, past diners filled with people who hadn't just watched their wife smile a little too brightly at another man. I found myself sitting on a metal bench near a convenience store, the kind of bench made for waiting on rides that never come. Then the phone rang. It was her. I don't know why I answered. Maybe because some small, pathetic piece of me still hoped she'd say the right thing, the real thing for once. "Otis," she said quickly, like she was out of breath. "Where did you go?" "I left. Again. You saw it." She sighed. Not panicked, not worried, just annoyed. "You're blowing this out of proportion." That phrase again. That was the 5th time in 3 months she'd said some version of that. "You're imagining things. It's not that deep. You always think the worst." Somehow, the problem was never what she did, it was always how I felt about it. "I'm not coming back tonight," I said quietly. There was silence on her end. "You're being dramatic," she finally said, her voice sharper now. "Again." "I saw his hand on you," I replied, "and you didn't move. You let him touch you like I never could in public. And you smiled, like you liked it." "Oh my God, Otis, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Mira? Help me understand, because I feel like an extra in the story of your life." "You're paranoid. That's the real issue here." "No," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "The issue is I don't recognize you anymore. You don't ask if I'm okay. You don't look at me unless someone else is looking too. And tonight, you brought me there to keep me quiet, so you'd feel justified. Like dragging your husband along made it okay." I heard her breathing, shaky. She was trying to figure out how to twist it, how to control the angle. I'd seen this before. She didn't get emotional when she was guilty. She got strategic. "I'm coming home soon," she said coldly. "We'll talk like adults." "I won't be there." "What?" I said, "I won't be home. Not tonight." Another pause. Then, "Where will you be?" "I don't know. Somewhere that isn't built out of lies." I hung up. My fingers shook, but not from fear. From freedom. It was the first time in a long while I'd said something that couldn't be unsaid. And then, as I stared down at the black screen of my phone, another text popped up, from an unknown number. I didn't know she was married. I stared at the message for a long time without blinking. I didn't know she was married. It felt like someone had cracked open the floor beneath me and I was just floating above it, trying to decide if I should fall or run. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was spam. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But my name was in the contact info, Otis F. And my phone number isn't exactly floating around in the wild. I sat there frozen, thumbs hovering above the keyboard. The air around me suddenly cold despite the city's usual late-night humidity. I finally typed, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then came back. Whoever it was, they were thinking hard. His name's Grant. He told me he was single. We've been seeing each other for 2 months. I didn't reply, couldn't. I think my whole nervous system short-circuited. My ears buzzed like there was static inside my skull. It wasn't that I was shocked Mira had crossed a line. It was that I had always convinced myself that if she ever did, she'd at least keep it hidden well enough to preserve the illusion. But this was sloppy, arrogant, like I didn't even deserve the courtesy of a clean betrayal. A second message came in fast. "I saw your name on a letter at his apartment. I Googled it. You're her husband, aren't you?" And there it was. Confirmation from a stranger that I wasn't crazy. That the gut feelings, the late-night doubts, the way Myra's phone never lit up near me anymore. It wasn't imagination. It was evidence. A complete stranger had just given me more truth in 2 texts than Mira had in months. I replied, "Yes, I am, or was." She responded almost immediately, "I'm sorry. I had no idea." He said she was an ex, that she still hung around. I feel sick. That made 2 of us. My legs finally moved, and I stood from the bench like I was coming up from underwater. I looked around and had no idea where I was. Some part of the city I hadn't wandered in years. I started walking again, this time not aimlessly. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere to think, somewhere away from people, phones, and thoughts I wasn't ready to process. But then the screen lit up again. "Do you want to know everything?" That question stopped me in my tracks. I held my breath, thumb over the reply box, and I actually hesitated. There was a version of me, the old Otis, the forgiving, bend-over-backward Otis, who might have said no, who would have told himself ignorance was easier. But that version of me had already been humiliated twice tonight. He was buried somewhere between the elevator and that rooftop bar. "Yes," I typed. "Tell me everything." What followed over the next few minutes was a digital confession I never saw coming. This woman, her name was May, told me how she met Grant on a dating app. How he said he was unattached but emotionally complicated. How he traveled a lot, worked late, and said his place wasn't really ready for guests, because he was still unpacking from a move. She'd believed it. I probably would have too. But then she came over unexpectedly one night, and while he was in the shower, she saw the letter, Myra's name, my name, our address. It didn't make sense. She asked questions. He dodged them. "Tonight," she said. She followed her instinct. She waited until he left for the rooftop party, then looked through his drawer. That's when she found a wedding photo. One I didn't even remember Mira printing. She didn't say what she planned to do next, just that she was sorry, and that if I wanted, she could send screenshots, proof, dates, even a photo of them together. I didn't reply, not because I didn't want it. I did, but because my hands were trembling, and my heart was doing something it hadn't done in years. It was getting louder. I realized then that the story I'd been living wasn't just broken. It had been rewritten without me. She hadn't just drifted. She had built a new plot with new characters and left me in the footnotes. But not anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I walked until my feet hurt. Then I sat on a cold bench outside a laundromat that buzzed with fluorescent lights and coin machines. I stared at passing cars, at strangers living their normal lives. People who probably weren't unraveling the truth about a marriage that had already ended months ago. I kept replaying that message. I didn't know she was married, over and over. I could practically hear the panic in May's words. Not guilt, just disbelief. And that made it worse. He didn't just cheat with someone who didn't care. He lied to someone innocent, just like Mira had lied to me. By the time the sun broke through the fog, my skin felt numb, and my eyes were dry like they'd run out of tears before I even had a chance to cry. I didn't go home. Couldn't. I wasn't ready to face the silence of that apartment. The fake scent of lavender candles. The framed photos of moments that were already fake when we smiled for them. Instead, I went to the one place Mira never thought I'd go, her office. She always bragged about how professional everything was, how polished her team looked, how no one ever brought personal drama into the space. Well, today that was going to change. I waited in the lobby for 15 minutes. I didn't ask for permission. I just sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at the photo May had sent. Grant and Mira, sitting at an outdoor cafe. He was holding her wrist. She was looking at him the way I used to pray she'd look at me, with ease, with comfort, with intention. She walked into the building not long after. Heels clicking, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't see me right away, but when she did, her entire expression changed. She slowed down, eyes darted around. For once, she looked afraid of what I might say. "Otis," she said cautiously, walking over. "What are you doing here? I thought we could talk, since texting isn't really working for us lately." "Not here," she hissed under her breath. "We'll talk tonight. Please don't make a scene." "I won't make a scene," I said, standing up. "But I'll ask a question." She blinked. Her grip on the coffee cup tightened. "Does Grant know you told me he was just an old coworker?" Her face paled, just slightly, enough for me to notice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do, because May does. That's who I've been talking to. The one you didn't know about. The one he didn't lie to well enough." She looked like her body was split in two. One half trying to run, the other trying to hold composure. She leaned in. "This isn't the place." "No," I said. "It never is. And you know what? That's the problem. There's never a place to talk about what you did. Just parties to pretend at, dinners to smile through, vacations to post about. But the moment someone asks why your marriage feels like a bad rehearsal, it's suddenly not the place." People were looking now. Her coworkers had started to pass slower. Her eyes darted nervously, and she stepped closer to me, voice lowered but venomous. "If you're trying to humiliate me, congratulations. You're doing it." I smiled, not out of joy, but because, for once, she was the one squirming. "I'm not here to humiliate you, Mira. I'm here to let you know I'm done protecting your performance." I turned and walked out. She didn't follow. She didn't call after me. Maybe because she knew there was nothing left to say. Or maybe because she still believed I'd fold again later. But this version of me, the one who had nothing left to lose, she's never met him. I didn't go back to the apartment that night. I couldn't stomach the idea of sleeping in the same bed where she'd curled up next to me while lying through her teeth. So instead, I checked into a quiet roadside motel 30 minutes outside the city. The kind with orange walls, scratchy sheets, and a vending machine that eats your change. And honestly, it was perfect, because it was real. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't, unlike Myra's carefully curated life. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it clicked with every slow turn. I kept thinking about the look on her face when I said May's name. That split second where everything cracked. She didn't even deny it, not really. That told me more than any text ever could. Around 1 a.m., I opened my laptop, not to work, not to distract myself, but because I needed something to hold on to. And that's when I remembered something strange. A week earlier, Mira had asked me to help fix a sync issue between her phone and her laptop. She'd given me her password like it was nothing, like I'd never dare use it again. I did. I logged into her cloud storage, and my stomach twisted almost immediately. Dozens of folders, some labeled by clients, others by dates, but one stood out, Archive Personal in all caps, hidden in plain sight. I opened it. Inside were screenshots, photos, videos, and emails. So many emails. The first thing I saw was a message from Grant. The subject line? Our weekend plan. I clicked it. It wasn't vulgar. That would have been easier. No, it was worse. It was casual, domestic, intimate, like a life quietly being built beside mine. They'd stayed in a cabin upstate. 2 weeks ago, the same weekend Mira told me she was working overtime on the Donovan pitch. There were photos attached. Her in a hoodie I thought she'd donated. Him making breakfast. them in front of a fire. And then I found the message that took the last breath out of me. From Mira to Grant. I told Otis I want space. I think he suspects something, but I'll wait until after the Q3 project wraps to bring up divorce. It'll be easier when I have leverage. Leverage. Like I was a business transaction she was waiting to exit cleanly. I didn't realize I was shaking until I knocked over the plastic cup of motel water next to me. I just sat there, staring at the word divorce like it was a surprise. Shouldn't have been. But seeing it spelled out, planned, scheduled like a meeting, that was a different kind of wound. I wasn't even a human to her anymore. I was an obstacle, something to leverage. And still, the worst part? It wasn't just betrayal. It was how calculated it all was. She'd already replaced me emotionally. She just hadn't filed the paperwork yet. I sat there in silence for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just existed, as if my body hadn't caught up to what my mind now knew. Eventually, I logged out and closed the laptop. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen, hollow-eyed, lips pressed into a thin, exhausted line. That version of me, the man who still made excuses for her, who still believed this was a rough patch, who thought if he tried harder, he'd matter again, he died somewhere between opening that folder and reading the last email. And the man who remained? He wasn't planning to be leveraged. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't even try. The sun crept in through the stained motel curtains, casting lines across the floor that didn't feel like morning light, more like judgment. I sat in the same spot, still dressed, laptop shut but still radiating the poison I'd let in hours earlier. Mira had planned to leave me, quietly, neatly, like tossing out expired milk. She just hadn't decided when I'd be convenient enough to discard. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering what I'd done wrong. I wasn't overanalyzing my tone, my habits, my silence, because I realized Mira had never needed me to be wrong. She just needed me to stay dumb, docile, predictable, someone who wouldn't ask questions until it was too late. And I had been that person for far too long. But not anymore. I checked out of the motel without a plan. I didn't pack my things from the apartment. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't even talk to Mira. Not yet. Instead, I went to the one person who'd unknowingly handed me the final piece, May. She agreed to meet me at a small coffee shop near her work. I told her she didn't owe me anything. I wasn't trying to trap her or make her feel guilty. I just needed the truth from someone who hadn't practiced it in front of a mirror. She arrived looking nervous, but not ashamed, and that mattered more than she knew. She sat down across from me, hands clutching a takeaway cup, eyes watching me carefully like I might crack at any second. "I can't stop thinking about it," she said, before I could even start. How easily he lied. How normal he made it all seem. I nodded. That's the part that messes with your head. Not the cheating itself, the normalcy of it. She exhaled, like someone who'd been holding her breath for days. I asked him last night, point blank, "Are you married?" You know what he said? I didn't answer. He smiled and said, "Not anymore." I looked down. My hands were clenched into fists in my lap. Not in rage, just reflex. Like my body didn't know what to do with all this quiet fury. "He still doesn't know I reached out to you," she added. "I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say something." "Thank you," I said. "Really. I saw things in him that didn't make sense," she continued. "Little things. He never talked about his past, always kept his phone upside down. Once I saw a wedding ring in his glove box. He said it belonged to his father. Of course he did, because lies work best when they come coated in sentiment." She paused for a moment, then leaned in. "What are you going to do?" I didn't know. Not exactly. I wasn't built for revenge. I wasn't the guy who slashed tires or sent mass emails with photos attached. That wasn't my language. But silence, that I knew. And not the passive kind. I was done explaining. Done performing. "I'm going to disappear," I said quietly. "Not forever. Just long enough for her to feel the absence she's been manufacturing piece by piece." May looked confused. She wanted space. She'll get it. That afternoon, I went back to the apartment while she was still at work. I moved fast, packed only what I needed: documents, clothes, a few keepsakes that still felt like mine. I left the wedding photo on the kitchen table, the one from her drawer, the one she kept for nostalgia or leverage or both. I didn't leave a note, no explanation, just a key. I turned off my phone, transferred what was left in our joint account to a new one in my name, canceled every subscription I paid for under hers, and I walked out, not angry, not broken, just done. And I knew, the moment she walked through that door and saw the emptiness where I used to be, the panic would come. But it wouldn't be love. It would be loss of control, of narrative, of convenience. And for the first time in years, I wouldn't be around to soften that fall. Took her 3 days to realize I was gone. 3 full days before she even tried to call. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, at first confused, then irritated, then crying. Each one a performance, building to a crescendo of guilt and desperation. But I wasn't listening anymore, not with the same ears, because when I finally pressed play, all I heard was someone grieving the collapse of control, not the loss of love. By the end of the week, I'd settled into a new apartment, smaller, quieter, and mine. The first night I slept there, I actually slept. Not the kind where you lie awake spinning scenarios in your head. The real kind, dreamless, deep, and undisturbed. Eventually, Mira emailed me, a long message filled with questions disguised as apologies. She said she was confused, that things got complicated, and that she never meant to hurt me. But the truth is, she didn't mean to get caught. And that's different. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because closure wasn't hers to give. It was mine to choose. Weeks passed, then a month. One morning, I stood at the window with a coffee in my hand, watching the city wake up, and I smiled. Not because I'd moved on in some dramatic rom-com kind of way, but because I had finally stepped out of a story that was never really mine. I stopped playing a role I was cast in without consent. I stopped begging to be seen in a relationship that had long since gone blind. I started writing again, not for anyone, just for me. I reconnected with my brother. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. I started taking walks without a destination. I began noticing how different the air feels when it isn't filled with dread. And one night I got a message from May. Just a simple line. "Thank you for not letting me be the lie anymore." I replied, "Thank you for helping me find the truth." We didn't become some cinematic ending, no romance, no sparks. Just mutual respect between two people who were used and healed. And Mira? Well, I heard she took a sabbatical from work. Grant didn't stick around long after I vanished. Maybe he didn't like her without the safety net of a passive husband. Or maybe he saw her for who she really was, once she stopped pretending. I'll never know. I don't need to, because the life I have now is mine. Not perfect, not flashy, but honest. And that's more than I ever had with her. If you made it to the end, I want to ask you something. Have you ever walked away from someone and discovered something better on the other side? Drop your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow the channel for more real-life confessions that make you think twice about the stories we tell and the ones we live.